Yeah, 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 yeah.
All right, let's welcome in Tylon Smith Jr. TT, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good.
That's good, man. How you been? How's life?
It's good. Can't complain. Teaching's doing well. Puppy's doing well. Getting back into shape, so can't complain.
That's awesome. I know that you're teaching at KO now. Tell me a little bit about that experience.
I mean, it feels good to be home. KO's where I graduated. Went there as an 8th grader through high school. So coming back, it feels like I'm coming home, kind of like how I was joining the Shockers. It's been fun. They've welcomed me with open arms, and I'm just excited to be back.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I know that you were teaching in your hometown before that. What led you to kind of just make the switch and come back home to KO?
It was tough. It was a very tough decision to leave Manchester because that's my hometown. But KO, at its truest, was my home. Since I was a student there, they've always treated me as home. The teachers still kept in contact and followed me through my career. So it was kind of a no-brainer. It was a tough decision, but at the end of the day, it was me coming home, and that's just what my last year of my life has been about.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's awesome. And you teach math at KO still, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's dope. Tell me a little bit more about that experience, because I know that I teach myself. I teach physical education and health, and I know it's not the easiest thing to do. Tell me a little bit more about that experience and maybe any challenges that you have being a teacher.
So math was always my subject since I was a kid. It just always came naturally to me. So when it became time to start teaching, it was kind of the no-brainer subject for me. It has its challenges because everyone knows math is a challenge around the world. And I saw that very early on last year in public schools, where just math was a huge need. But I like to make it fun. I like to make it exciting. It's a huge necessity to have as a skill. So it has its challenges, but I mean, I enjoy it. I mean, my goal is just to try and keep it as light and fun as possible with the kids and give them a different perspective.
Yeah, any opportunity to kind of just have an impact on the youth and teach, the young ones, I think it's a great opportunity to have. And like I said before, it's extremely challenging to accomplish that goal and kind of, reach any objectives when it comes to a certain subject. I just know some of the challenges that I have in the school setting is a lot of times like kids don't necessarily want to be there.
Oh no.
Yeah. So like that's especially like after like COVID and whatnot, like kids just being in the school has always been like a challenge. So like you look for ways to be creative and make it fun for them, but also have them still learn and realize the setting that they're in. You know what I mean? Like where they were kind of just used to being home. And then trying to, revert back to that school setting has been like one of the challenges for me. I don't know if you have anything like similar when it comes to it, but.
So my first year of teaching was in the middle of COVID. So COVID kind of stopped my basketball career in a sense because just traveling was ended. So that kind of thrust me into a teaching career. And my first year teaching was 2nd grade remote. So I was teaching a 2nd grade class behind a computer screen. So that was just the first year being thrust into that fire. But COVID hit a huge reset for everyone. And I think we're still trying to get back into some normalcy. And I think this is the first year where you're starting to like get back into what life was like pre-COVID, but still have that awareness of what COVID did and what it's changed for us. So you definitely see those challenges. I think for the most part, kids just want to be around kids. And I think they miss that aspect. And I'm seeing it as a teacher, and I'm sure you have as well, is that social aspect. Like they don't know how to hang around each other because 2 years of their lives were removed of being around their own age group. So that's the biggest challenge. I think the academic piece will catch up in time. I think that social aspect was the biggest blow to like a kid's development.
Yeah, and it has really been difficult, like especially like the social interaction. You can tell that certain students just don't know how to talk to each other. So it's the peers, but then it's also like their teachers as well.
Yep.
And I notice it on both ends. Like it's not just like the students. Like sometimes it's like a new teacher as well, especially because I come from like a charter school. So like new teacher doesn't necessarily know how to engage or talk to a certain student just because like they're not familiar with their background. Yep. So it's all like perspectives, right? Like if that's like something that you're not familiar with and you don't come from that, like how could you possibly relate to like a student that might be like in an inner city, you know, maybe their home situation isn't the best. Yep. Like it can be difficult because like for a teacher, like being in that setting, being in a school setting, like you have a vision of it going a certain way. Yep. Where that kid is just not mentally is just not there yet. You know what I'm saying? So like that has always been like for me specifically, because like I come from like a small town. Like I didn't grow up in a city. Right. But kind of just like being like in Worcester, and that's kind of just like my background and being familiar with what that's like. It helps me adapt a little bit to the setting that I'm in currently. And now it's like, okay, like how do I adjust my mentality to help like the students like understand and actually like learn what's going on. But the question I actually wanted to ask you is, did you always know that you wanted to be a teacher like after college and all of those things?
So growing up, I was very narrow-minded with basketball. I didn't really think about life after basketball, and it didn't happen until my senior year at KO, where my history teacher, Mr. Jones, he came up to me and was like, "What are you gonna do when basketball's all said and done?" I was like, "Honestly, I haven't thought about it." And he looked me in the eye and said, "You should go into teaching." And at 17, I was looking at him like, "Why would I do that?" Like at that time I had mentoring kids, but I didn't think anything past that. He was like, "You just have that it factor with kids, but you're also a man of color. And in the education field, there's not many of you." And as a 17-year-old kid, they went in one ear and out the other. So when I went to Southern, I was going to major in education, and I switched the second day. Because at orientation, the lady was like, "You don't need a degree to become a teacher." So like, I'm not going to waste a degree, so I'll just go get it in something else. I ended up getting my bachelor's in sports management and then pursued basketball. And then once COVID hit, I was like, you know what, I could be a teacher. But going through my 20s, every teacher was like, "Don't be a teacher. It's not worth it." But that was just one. And I started to notice it with, if you can't connect with kids on a personal level, then you're going to struggle as a teacher. And I think that's what kind of eased me into it, is because I have that ability to make relationships. And I think that's going to be even more important moving forward after COVID. So once that slowed down and I got into teaching, like I kind of got my groove, and I was like, I really do enjoy this.
Yeah, so, no, that's awesome. That's special.
I can't say that I've always said I wanted to be a teacher, because that'd be a lie. But once I got into it, I was like, yeah, I could do this for a while.
Yeah, and that's, I think you never really know until you're there, right? Like it's one of those things that's heavily dependent on like trial and error. Like there's certain things that are going to work, and there's certain things that aren't going to work. Right. And for me, like I never imagined being a teacher at all. I was very similar to you, just kind of just focused on basketball, and that's all I wanted to do. And at that point, you couldn't tell me anything. Like
we're gonna play basketball forever.
Yeah, like you could not tell me that I was going to stop playing basketball. But then that reality definitely sets in, right? So now it's kind of just like, how do you use that experience to kind of just carry you through? Because a lot of people might not understand it, but like any athlete really that has given essentially their all to like a sport, it's not easy to just flip that switch and just like focus on like a career that has nothing to do with it. Because like essentially like that was your life. Like that's all you knew. That's all you knew how to do at one point.
Sleep, breathe.
So it can be a tough adjustment, and a lot of people might think that's like silly or like it's not just like the norm, but that's the reality. Is like a lot of basketball players are trying to, especially like people that are done with like college and like they're not playing basketball anymore, like they are trying to adjust. And not everybody figures it out. Like, you know, maybe they don't have like the support system that they need, or maybe they're just like not able to really like tap into like maybe like their creative side and figure out like, how can I spin basketball and use that as like my career platform. I think that's like the biggest challenge for like a lot of guys, especially like around here. Like that might be just like struggling with themselves internally because they aren't in that setting anymore.
Right. I think for me, like maybe the year before I started teaching when COVID was happening, like I was struggling with that, because it was like basketball was still like going, but it wasn't like I wasn't overseas or anything. And I was like, what am I gonna do when I'm done? Like I got a degree in sports management, but I'm not doing anything for sports management. I'm working in schools, but I want something better, and this isn't a career. And I hit a dark time, and it was just like, what's going to come of this? Like, was basketball really worth it that I didn't dive into a career in my early 20s so I can be settled in my late 20s? And it was a dark time, and I know a lot of athletes at some point it's going to stop. Basketball's going to stop, football's going to stop, whatever your passion, it's going to come to an end. So kind of my advice to them would be start building that plan before that day comes, because you don't want to get to the point where it stops and then you're like, now what? Like, you kind of want to put yourself in play so that once it stops, like, you can ease into the transition. Now, luckily for me, COVID happened and I was blessed with an opportunity to start teaching and really find that passion. But for others, they may not find that for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So if the more you can do now to kind of ease that transition, I know it's tough because you're in the grind. You don't want to think about anything else. You don't want to think about the end, but the harsh reality is that it is going to come to an end, and it can come to an end a lot sooner than you plan on it. As you said. So did I think I would be teaching in my 20s and going into my 30s? No, I felt like I was going to be playing pro basketball until I was 40. Yeah. But that's not what it is. So luckily, I was blessed with the opportunity. So my advice is put yourself in play. And even if you're putting emotions in play that doesn't happen for the next 10 years, at least by the time it comes, you're ready to roll. And it's an easier transition because you just don't want to go through that dark phase of really start questioning, was it all worth it?
Yeah, and that's great advice, honestly. And I think when people hear that, like, it's extremely important to just realize that there is no like time stamp on that. Yeah. Like, you have to run your own race, go at your own pace. And I know that there is just so much pressure, right? Like, whether it be social media or just like society in general, there's a lot of pressure on people to accomplish certain goals by like a certain amount of time. Yep. You know, and like, I feel like a lot of people just stress themselves out when they're thinking like, oh, like, I didn't accomplish this goal by this age or by this time frame. And it's just like everyone's situation is unique, right? Everyone's situation is different. And like, even something like, you know, playing pro basketball or something like that, playing a pro sport, like, everybody's situation is unique and entirely different. And like, you can't just look at someone else's situation and be like, oh, like, I should have accomplished that too, or I should be in that situation over that person. And that goes for anything. That's a career path. Yep. That's a regular, 9 to 5. Like, you just can't approach it with that mentality. You really just gotta focus on like yourself and like your situation and what you can control, and just realize that if you're really truly focused on something, like, and that's what you want to do, like, that's what your passion is, like, it's going to get done. Yep. It's going to get done at some point. It might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, but it'll happen at some point if that's what you feel your passion is. Like, if it's truly your passion, like, it's not something you're just going to give up and drop the next day. Right? Absolutely. So like, that's something that I try to like, just tell myself often. It's just like pursuing the things that I'm passionate about and just being focused on that. It's going to happen, like, just not quitting because I'm not finding like the success right away. I think is extremely important for me to focus on so that I don't lose my way when it comes to accomplishing that goal.
Right. And those attributes and skills that you develop as an athlete, of that dedication to a craft and perfecting your skill, it transitions better than you think. Is it going to look different? Yes. Am I going to wake up at 5 a.m. and go work out to be the best teacher I can? Probably not. But I'm taking that dedication and I'm putting it into a different craft. So that drive, that dedication, those work habits, they carry over. It's just it's going to look different. And I think that's just a unique thing that as athletes, we kind of have that added advantage of we know what a grind looks like. So when we get to that next career path, as long as the passion is behind it, like you said, it's gonna come, and then you have the skills, you know what it takes, and you just gotta have that perseverance to just keep pushing through. And I think that's kind of what helps athletes transition when that time comes.
Yeah, and that's great. I think when it comes down to that, a lot of people have their influences in life. Yep. Whether it be a person or just like a certain experience that influenced them. What would you say your influences are, whether it be like a person or a few people that have influenced you and impact you in your life and helped you really see what life, is, and like helped you get to that next phase?
For me, growing up, my influences, I mean, it's not going to come as a surprise to my parents. Just watching them grind at a young age to provide for myself and my younger sister, that kind of like instilled a work habit in me. And they instilled like, you got to like really work to get what you want to do. And they grinded from a very early age. So watching them and their dynamic, that kind of like instilled in me like, you got to put in the work if you want the results. And then my sister. She's probably the strongest person I know. Even though she's my younger sister, I look up to her every day because she's resilient. She's not scared to take risks. I was more the meticulous, like have to calculate every single step, where she was just like, I'm just gonna go do it, and if whatever happens, happens. So I always like envy that and like appreciate that for her, because she didn't care what other people had to say. She didn't care what the critics were going to say, what our parents had to say. She was going to go do it because that's what she wanted to do. And that kind of instilled in me, like, this is my life. I got to live it the way I want to live it. So they were like heavily influenced. And then, as you know, because you're a fellow fan, Kobe. And it sounds as corny as it is, but Kobe was a huge influence on me growing up. Just the way he took serious his career, his life. Like I just watched him from a rookie, and it to this day, like some of the things I've learned from him carry over into my professional life and still with basketball. With whatever you do and you decide to do in life, you got to take it serious and you got to put your all into it. There's no half-assing it, none of that. Like you got to be serious and you got to take it serious, because at the end of the day, there's probably someone out there working just as hard, if not harder. So what are you doing to combat that? So I would say, of growing up my life, my parents, my sister, and Kobe.
Yeah, no, and that's awesome. I think the unique part about that is, as you mentioned, Kobe, like, and it's somebody you've never met before,
Yep.
right? Like, to be able to view their life and just have it be an influence, I think that really speaks to like the kind of person that he was, and the platform that, either like a celebrity or like a professional athlete, the platform that they have is extremely impactful. It's extremely impressionable. And that's why the word professional, comes into play. And it's not something that should be, taken lightly either. Realizing what that is. And I understand, that when you're in that setting, right, like you have that platform, you are being watched constantly
At
right?
all times.
And there are some guys out there or some athletes out there that are just like, maybe I'm not the role model you should be watching, which is fine, right? Like, you still want to live the life you want to live the way that you want to live it. But at some point, like, it's just like when you have like a platform like that, it's almost like it's bigger than yourself, right? It's almost like, who am I to, portray like a negative lifestyle to someone that might be watching me closely, or someone that's younger than myself, and like even though like I am not like, I don't have that platform like where everybody knows me, like I can go to like a certain spot, someone's gonna come up to me and know who I am. I try to carry myself in a way where, if there is somebody watching me that I just don't know of, like I want to make sure that I'm leaving that impression, like,
right,
like, oh, like that's what I would want to be like, if when I grow up, or if I'm in that setting. I think to have that mindset like is extremely important for our youth specifically.
Yes.
And then kind of just tying that back into being like a teacher, you know what I mean? Like I have my days where I don't want to be there, you know what I'm saying? Because like at times there's a point where I feel like I am not able to kind of just focus on what I truly want to do.
Right.
But then I have to think of like the overall picture of, the platform that I'm trying to provide. And that's just to create that impact.
Yep.
To create that platform. So that can be done in any setting. Whether it is being a teacher or whether it's, just connecting with certain individuals. That could be done anywhere. Right. So like that's sometimes I have to just like remind myself like, hey, like this is, the purpose of what it is that I'm trying to accomplish with my life. just because like, you know, I'm teaching in the moment and, you know, I'm working during the day and I'm not able to kind of just like focus on the business that like I started. It's still an opportunity for me to connect with students, other teachers, and kind of just leave that imprint a little bit and kind of just revert back to that. So
yeah, and to kind of flip the script, I mean, as a teacher, we all know we're underappreciated, we're underpaid, and all that you can find anywhere. But the most rewarding thing about it is the impact we make on them. Like there's days where we all go through it, that you're just going through it. It's not one of your best days, but like a kid comes up to you and just says like something so small, but you realize that it's bigger than you, and that impact that they have, because that's the best reward. If you realize you made an impact in a kid's life, and like you changed their lives for the better, then that's better than any paycheck you can get. And that's the biggest reason I teach. I don't do it for the money, clearly. I do it for the kids, and I just love seeing them and being able to help them grow and develop into what they're meant to be. And it's kind of dope. You got two males of color that are teachers, and there's not many of us in the world. So to give them that narrative and be like, well, this is possible for you. Because growing up, I've never had a teacher of color, male or female. In mine, from elementary through college, never had a teacher of color. And for you and I, we're probably going to be a lot of kids first. And we might be their only, but at least we know, and our kids of color coming up know, that it is possible to be a teacher. Like you don't got to just settle for a security guard, a para. Like there are other opportunities for you out there. And then on top of that, you got your own business. So you're probably thinking about that, but they're seeing it as well. Mr. Hayes has his own business. He has his own team. Like, I want to be like him when I get older. Be like, that's possible for me, because the only owners they see on TV are white, and that's just the reality of it. So you're now providing a different narrative for them without even knowing that you're doing it, and that's the dope part about it.
yeah, and that's again reminding myself of like the platform that's being provided, right?
Yep.
Like, can't go into the school with like a negative mindset because you just don't know how you're impacting certain individuals.
Kids won't even let you come in negative, man. They'll see you down and they want to cheer you up just as bad as you want to cheer them up.
Right.
They ain't letting that happen.
Well, that's like the thing too, is just like teaching has probably been like the most like humbling experience, because like the kids don't lie.
No.
You know what I'm saying? Like
No, they don't.
they'll say the first thing that comes to their mind without even thinking about it, which is fine. Like you just can't give them a reaction, right? So it's just like when I do go in there and like, you know, they're asking me if I'm mad or anything like that, I try to use it as like a teachable moment. You know what I'm saying? Like let them know like, hey, like you really shouldn't be telling anybody how they're feeling. You know, like a certain emotion and how that can be triggering to some people. But it's just getting them to understand, especially like in a gym setting, it's a little different than like a classroom setting. They're overstimulated when they walk in.
Oh yeah,
right. Like they see the open space, they just want to freak
balls,
out. Yeah, they see basketballs, they just want to lose their minds. And I'm like, how do I paint the picture for them? Like that's not how they should be coming into the gym,
right?
Without seeming like an angry individual,
right?
That's always been like the challenge, and that's something that I'm still working on to like this day, just trying to connect with them and try to figuring it out. But like setting that expectation and kind of just letting them know, like, when you come into the gym, like I need you guys to just line up on a blue line and get ready for like our warm up so that we can get to our activity so that you can have that fun.
Right.
But you know, if you're not going to follow that expectation, then that's just time that you're going to waste.
Right.
But that's again something that we're still working on. A lot of kids just come into the gym, they start running around, they see their friends, they just want to be active, which is great. It's just trying to control it so that when they go back to the classroom, like they're able to, you know, return to like that baseline where they're kind of just like being physical and just like having all that energy, but then having to like revert back to like the classroom setting.
Right.
So like I could easily just like have it be like a free for all. You know what I mean? Like let them do their own thing, but that's not going to help the next teacher at all.
No.
So yeah, so like I have to like lay down some type of rules, some type of expectations so that when they go back into the classroom, like they're still in that mode. Which isn't the easiest thing to do. But obviously if there's kids that aren't following directions, and I'm sure like you can speak to this, it's just like they either have to sit out or like there's some type of consequence, right? Like they're not doing gym if they're just not going to follow directions.
Right.
So
I mean, kids need structure. They're not going to admit to it, but they do. And I think deep down they crave it. I think chaos doesn't sit well with them. Like sure, they'll like enjoy it for like a day or two. but then it's like I need some type of like guideline to go off of. So I think definitely, and they don't see it, but you're inheriting skills that's going to help them in the future, because once you get into the real world, there is no chaos. There is no free for all. Like, you're following different guidelines no matter what career you choose. So, I mean, I get it. I mean, kids, at the end of the day, it's the most rewarding job. I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't want to be in an office working in Wall Street. Wouldn't want to be a CEO of a Fortune 500 country. Like, I want to be with kids. Like, I just think that's just where I was meant to be and what God put me on this earth for. So
Yeah, no, definitely. To change the subject a little bit, I want to talk about, your decision to go to KO, knowing that you're from Manchester, and Manchester seems like a big basketball community with, a ton of schools in that area. You got East Catholic, you got Cheney Tech, Manchester High. Kind of wanted to tap into that and your decision to go to Kingswood, and what led to that decision.
So KO really wasn't my decision. To be honest.
Okay.
It was really my parents' decision.
Got you.
I didn't want to go to Manchester High. I knew very early on I wasn't going to go to Manchester High for a lot of reasons. At that time, Manchester High wasn't as good as it is now in terms of structure. But also, like, the basketball program wasn't the best. Not a lot of people know this, but if I did go the public school route, I'd be at Windsor, which would probably come as no shock to many because my grandfather's a coach. But if I was given the opportunity to go public school, I would have been at Windsor High for my 4 years. That's where I wanted to go, because growing up, public school was like, that was it. That was the platform you needed to be on as a basketball player. Prep school hadn't blown up at that time. So I didn't want to go to KO because I didn't think I was going to get enough exposure.
Gotcha.
Whereas my parents saw it differently. Whereas I wasn't getting challenged academically at Manchester. Like, I would finish homework in 10 minutes. And my dad was frustrated with that. So he wanted to challenge me. So that was the biggest push for KO, because I needed that challenge as a student. He felt at the time that basketball was going to take care of itself, that I was good enough to create my own platform no matter where I went. So I went to KO as an 8th grader, and I hated it, to be honest. Like, I tell a lot of people this at KO. I hated my first year at KO. Like, I wanted to leave. It was a culture shock to being around school with mostly majority white people. That none of them looked like me, talked like me, were coming from a culture I was coming from. And then, to be honest, that year at KO at 8th grade changed my whole basketball career. I was able to repeat as an 8th grader. Well, now they call it reclassifying. Mm-hmm. And it kind of helped me, like, come into my own as a basketball player. I was playing, as an 8th grader, I was playing varsity. I was going against varsity players every day. And it just took my game to another level. So that as a freshman, I came in ready to roll, both as a student and as an athlete. And then once I got to a freshman at KO, that was it. But the biggest reason for KO was just to challenge me academically. My parents felt that basketball was going to take care of itself.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people don't pursue it for that, right?
Yep.
Like, when they reclassify, like, they have, just from my, like, experience or what I've seen, it's just like they focus on their sport.
Yep.
They're not really looking for, like, an academic challenge, which is, it's great that you say that. Like, not everybody has that mentality, and it obviously, like, it worked out. Right?
Yes.
So, like, parents knew in that situation, the best thing for you in that moment, which is why, like, they're the impactful people, like, in your life. And it's just like, not everybody sees it that way, right? Like, there might be parents out there that might listen to, like, their child and kind of just give into, like, what it is that they want to do in that moment, even though that they know that's not the best thing for them. Right. So, like, I think that's a great thing, like, that your parents kind of just, even though, like, when you first got there, you didn't like it, or, like, you didn't feel comfortable necessarily, but you ended up staying there and graduating from there, and then having a hell of a basketball career when you went to Southern, right? So being able to see that for what it is, maybe it wasn't the best situation for you in that moment, but it worked out. And again, like, your parents had your best interest at heart, right? Got the challenge academically, playing against varsity players as an 8th grader, which not everyone gets to do. And like you just said, like, it took your game to, like, that next level.
Yeah.
And I really feel like that helps people, carry on, like, that carries on, like, throughout their life. And it might not just be in basketball.
Right.
Like, you were able to adapt.
Yep.
And that's like the bigger picture.
Yeah.
So
No, absolutely.
being familiar with like your surroundings and learning a completely different demographic and being able to adapt and still be successful.
Right.
Right? Like not everyone sees that for what it is.
Yep. And then like KO opened a lot of doors. Not to say that they probably wouldn't have opened if I went to a public school, but not a lot of people know. Like I got into Yale, and that's not an easy task to get into. And I actually committed to go to Yale my junior year, and that was my college commitment. Like I was done. And I don't know if that door opens if I go anywhere else. I think KO inherited a lot of skills in me to adapt, but also inherited a lot of skills to like open up those type of doors and like prepare me for what the next step was. Like my high school experience was a lot tougher than my college experience in terms of academics. Like college was easy because everything college threw at me I'd already seen at KO. So like I was able to breeze and handle the grind of a basketball season because I can maintain my academics because of KO. Like I was taught those time management skills, those communication skills, to be able to write papers on the bus, to communicate with my professors and things like that, to plan ahead. So Southern was easy. Like that was just a breeze. KO was the one that opened up those doors and those opportunities and like really built that foundation for me.
Yeah, that's great. So speaking to that, because I actually didn't even know that. So what led you to the decision to go to Southern?
So my junior year, I committed to Yale. Yale had shown a strong interest. I got into the school. I had a really good relationship with Coach Jones. I went to their camp that summer, and I was all set. I was committed. That was like my dream school going into KO anyway.
Yeah.
And it was just perfect. And it was close. My family could see games. And then budget cuts happened in that state that year going into that would be my freshman year. So Yale ended up losing a bunch of money for athletics, so to UConn and a bunch of other state schools. So I would have ended up having to pay my first year. And the only reason I found this out was I overheard a conversation with my parents. Late at night, one of those conversations where they think the kids are asleep, and I just happened to hear it. And the conversation was that my sister was going to have to sacrifice, that because they were going to pay for that first year. 1 year at Yale is a hefty amount.
Yeah.
That she would then, because she's 2 years behind me, she would then have to go to community college for her first 2 years. Then they can pay for her to go wherever she wanted to go. So the minute I heard my sister had to sacrifice, that was it. Like I decommitted the next day. And I didn't really tell my parents right away. And they were pissed. But then I ended up telling them, like, I didn't want my sister to sacrifice me.
Right.
So then my commitment opened back up, and I was like, I'm only going to go somewhere that's a free ride. So I played AAU the rest of that junior year, and Southern made a strong impression between Coach Mack, who I first met in Springfield, and then Coach Donnelly. They showed me from day one that I was their guy. They were ready to hand me the keys to the program. I wanted to be, at the time, Southern was one of the worst programs in the state, probably in the country. They were coming off losing seasons for a whole decade, and it provided me an opportunity to build something. And I just really trusted Mac, and I trusted Donnelly. And I had other schools that were looking, Quinnipiac Central and all that, but Southern just felt like the best fit in terms of going to a place that wants you and that you're going to feel wanted. Because, as you know, college athletics, it's a business at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So coaches are going to do what's best for them. So they may call you their guy and say you're the guy, but next year finding a replacement for you if you're not performing. So I always tell people, go where you're wanted. Don't go where you want to go where they want you. Because at the end of the day, it is a commitment. It's an investment. And Southern, from the very first day, showed that I was their guy, and I don't regret the decision. And a lot of people will say you should have met D1. Like I said, I don't regret my career there. I would go back and make the same decision knowing what I know now.
Yeah, and like I feel like that's like the easy thing to say, right? Like you should have went to Yale and like did your own thing. And at the same time, I think that speaks to like your character, knowing that your sister would have to sacrifice just based off of your decision. You know what I mean? Like being able to sacrifice that yourself for someone that you care about deeply, again, speaks to your character and who you are as a person, which maybe a lot of people don't understand. It's easy to be selfish, right?
Yep.
Like I think that's probably one of the easier things to do for people. It's just like make decisions for yourself. But when you have like somebody else like that you have to think of, you know, and have that impact your life directly and be able to still make that decision. I think that speaks to someone's character. And it's great to kind of just like hear that story and kind of just get a background of like where that decision stems from.
And I would do anything for my sister. I mean, she sacrificed a lot with traveling for AAU terms and stuff like that. So to have that opportunity to kind of give back and allow her to pursue her own dreams, it works out. And then Southern was perfect because they can all come see my games. Like that just means more to me than going Division I at a high program. If I was going to a college in California, my parents probably wouldn't see my games. They would have to watch it on TV. So it meant a lot to have them in the stands. It meant a lot to be able to hug my mother after winning a conference championship. It meant a lot to hug my father, hug my sister after winning the region. So like those type of moments, you can't take for granted. So like I said, for my sister, I'd do anything. So it was an easy. I get ridiculed all the time to this day that you should have went D1. You're that good. Well, I know I am, and that's cool. I made the decision I made. I wouldn't change it for the world.
Yeah, no, that's dope. So with that being said, if you feel like, say you went back and like you made the decision to still go to Yale, do you think your life would be different now?
I think so. I think a lot more basketball opportunities probably would have opened up right away just because Yale's D1 and the development I would have gotten at Yale. Yeah, it probably would have been a lot different for sure. Graduating with a Yale degree is probably a lot more lofty than graduating with a Southern degree. But again, I wouldn't change it because if maybe I do go to Yale, I don't tap into working with kids.
Right.
And I'm doing something different. Maybe I go into law because that was a passion of mine at the time. So who's to say it would be different? But again, I love where I'm at in life now. I love the kids that I'm able to teach and honor to be with each and every day, the coworkers, and being back at a school I graduated from. I mean, I think that means more to me than what could have been with Yale. And I can sit back right now and probably wonder, like, would my life be so much different? I mean, but it's not going to change anything at the end of the day. I made the decisions I made, and I don't regret any of them. But it probably would have been a lot different. I mean, could be making six figures right now, probably be sitting in a mansion talking about this. But, you know, it is what it is, and I'm happy with the decision I made.
Yeah, and it's like you never want to play with, like, the what ifs, right?
Yep.
Like you just said, you don't want to live with any regrets. You obviously made the best decision for you and your family in that moment, and I respect that. Just wanted to kind of just like tap into to see if it's something that you may have thought about.
Of course you think about it.
Right.
I mean, it's Yale, and that's one of the best schools in the country. But at the end of the day, I made that decision for my sister, and if I had to make it 10 more times, I'd make the same and choose her each and every time. So you don't want to open Pandora's box with the what ifs, because if you do that, you're going to waste a lot of energy and waste a lot of time like regretting and overthinking and thinking about life decisions. Like, trust your judgment, trust the reason you made those decisions, and rock with it.
Yeah, and I think that has a lot to do with, like, you know, your personal growth as well. Because, you know, when you spend a lot of time, you know, essentially by yourself, like, you kind of go down that hole a little bit. Like, you know, maybe if I made certain decisions a little differently, I might be in a better situation.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, you just can't do that to yourself, because just like mentally, like, there is so much that goes into that, right? And like that comes with a lot of doubt as well. And it's important to kind of just have that confidence about what it is or decisions that you've made, and just realize that everything is like a learning experience, right? So with that being said, like, maybe you made a decision, and not necessarily speaking to like your decision to go to Southern, but maybe you make a decision, you know, in your past that might have been questionable. So, okay, what can I do now to impact my life and get to where I want to be? I think that's kind of just like the next step. Like, I don't think it's ever reverting back to like, oh, if I made this decision, I'd be here.
Easily.
And now I got to feel sorry for myself and kind of just put that on everybody that I'm around. Like, no, like, what am I going to do today, right now, in this moment to get me to where I want to be?
I mean, there's going to be a lot of decisions in life that you probably look back and like, I wish I could have do things differently. Yeah, cool. 100%. Like, you're going to have those decisions. We're humans. We're not perfect. No one makes the right decision each and every time. But like you said, like, it's all about moving forward. A phrase that my close friends, we always say is, we don't live in the past, because you can't. Because if you do, then you'll never move forward. So take those lessons, take those decisions, the thought process went into them, and use it to a positive. Live in the present and prepare for the future is the best way to look at it. You can't get caught up on what you could have did. All you can focus on what you can do now.
Yeah, no, that's powerful stuff right there. So talking about your decision to go to Southern, talking about a little bit of basketball, and knowing that you have some experience playing basketball after college, let's tap into that a little bit and what that experience is like.
So Southern itself, it was a fun time. My freshman year, to come into a program that had no expectations. Like basketball was like the laughing stock of the campus. Like we couldn't get people to come to games. Like it was insane. Like at that time, the football team was like the gem of school. And like to really take it from my freshman year, I want to say our team record was 14-13.
Okay.
So we're like just barely cracking 500, and we lost the first round of playoffs. Then my sophomore year we went 17-10, and again like we were creating a little bit of buzz, but nothing. And then my junior year we erupted. And not to say my freshman sophomore year teams weren't good, because I think we were really talented. We just weren't ready yet, and you just kind of see that development coming. But by junior year, like everything just fell in line, and that's the team that went 30-3. That's the team where we won the conference for the first time in over a decade. We won the region for the first time in a decade. We went on a 20-something game winning streak. I think it was 28 games. And then we go to Indiana and we lose to a really good team that ended up winning the national championship. There was a lot of inner things that kind of cost us that game and probably cost us a national championship. But again, we put Southern on the map, and we were the talk of the Connecticut. There was a lot of buzz, and then my senior year, we got ranked as high as number 3 in the country. And I don't think Southern's ever been ranked that high. So to be a part of that type of success, to be a part of building that program and making it one of the best teams in the Northeast 10 and in one of the colleges in the Northeast period, it was special. It was something that I'll never take for granted, because at the end of the day, my class was the most winningest class of Southern history. And I think the class that came before us ended up beating us, but I was part of that. So to be a part of history is bigger than if I were to go to a Division I school and just be another class.
Yeah.
Like my class, that team, my junior year team, will probably go in the Hall of Fame in Southern one day, because there was just a lot of talent on that team, but we were more than a team. Like it was just a band of brothers, and that just run was something special that I'll never take for granted.
Yeah, and like that's something that nobody can take away from you, right? Like that experience alone is just forever stamped.
Yep.
Like your impact on the school specifically is just like allowed them to kind of just revamp that whole basketball program. Like you said, like, you know, the basketball program before you got there wasn't great.
Yep.
And then being able to get it to where it was and like adding certain pieces like around you, like I think that speaks to like the level that you were at basketball wise, especially at that time. And you know, being like a D2 All-American and having like all of those accolades, and then like the team accolades on top of that, and then being able to focus on school, and then like, you know, being rewarded with honors like in college as well. It's just like not everybody from Connecticut does that. You know what I'm saying? Like there's people that like leave their mark or whatever, like individually, but it's just like in terms of just the overall program and like the school aspect, the athletic part of it, like I think it's a huge accomplishment to be that involved with your school and then to accomplish all of those goals in such a short amount of time.
I think one of my favorite accolades is probably the fact that I was a 2-time academic All-American. Whereas a lot of people will see the All-Americans, the MVPs, and things like that, the records, all-time leading assist leader, all that stuff. But like to be nominated and recognized as an academic All-American, I think that just exemplifies who I am. Because as much as I take basketball serious, I took my work in the classroom just as serious. So to graduate magna cum laude, to have that recognition as an academic student as well as an athlete, like that just transcends anything that I accomplished individually on the basketball court, because that's a double-edged sword. Like, yeah, I put in the work on the basketball court, but I also was doing this in the classroom as well. And I take pride in that I wanted to be the best athlete that I could be, but also be the best student that I could be. And then I think that's lost in this society now because we're so focused on sports that we forget that classroom is important. If you want to make it where you want to go, like you got to have that work ethic in the classroom. Because unless you're a lottery ticket, you're going to college for 4 years. Like, if you're not leaving in the first year to go to the draft or the first 2 years to go to NFL draft, then you need to take that work in the classroom serious.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, once your basketball career ends, that work in the classroom is going to come back to you. Did you get that degree or did you not? Because like we've said earlier, basketball is going to come to an end. And what are you going to do? You don't want to finish basketball in your late 30s and then have to go back to school. Like, nobody wants to do that.
Nobody.
So if you can finish school in your 20s, regardless of what it looks like, finish it.
Yeah.
But a lot of us, we all know what the odds are making it to the league. It's not very high. So when you get there, you got to take the academic part serious. I'm not saying graduate with honors, but take care of business. Because at the end of the day, that's going to propel you to something different when basketball comes to an end.
Yeah, definitely want to have something to fall back on, right? Like, we all go or want to go to college to play our sport. Like, that's our main focus. But also realizing that there is another goal that needs to be accomplished, and that's graduating with a degree. Like, that's why you're there. Otherwise, like, why do it? You know what I mean? Like, if you don't get that degree, it's almost like it's for nothing. You don't got nothing to fall back on, and especially now, that would make it extremely difficult to even find a job. Like, a lot of people require you to have at the very least like your bachelor's.
Now you need a master's, like,
right?
It's crazy.
And now you got to go back to school to get your master's to have certain jobs that
entry level at that.
Right, like that's the standard
that we're living in.
Yeah, and it's tough, and it's only getting tougher because everybody's doing it.
Right.
So like kind of like how you just said that your chances of playing like in the NBA is very slim. Well, getting that next job is getting even slimmer because there's everybody that
competition
is doing it, and that's just the way of the world. Yeah. So if you don't accomplish those goals, you don't graduate with your degree. I'm not saying you can't be successful because there's other things that you can do, obviously, without a degree. But if you're in that setting, like you're in college, like you have to set that time aside. Yeah. Like it can't just be like, oh, I'm here for basketball, that's it. I'm not going to school. I'm not getting good grades, because if you don't have a good GPA, you're not playing, you're not on the court, and then you're not going to graduate.
Right.
So that has to sink in at some point.
And you owe it to yourself to maximize an opportunity. Yeah. Like if you're going to school for free, that's a free degree.
Right.
You don't want to there's no better feeling than leaving school with no student loans. And a lot of my friends like they say it, like, you're so lucky you don't have student loans. And I was blessed to have the opportunity to be a scholarship athlete. So if you get that opportunity, don't take it for granted.
Yeah.
Like, maximize it. Take care of what you need to take care of. Get that degree. It's free. Someone is paying for you to better your life. Someone is paying for you to elevate your life at some point. And you owe it to yourself to be the best version of yourself that you can be. And that doesn't just mean on the court, on the field, but also in the classroom. Yeah. Like, I'm not saying go be a straight A student, but do what you need to do to get that degree so that you can set yourself up for bigger things later on in life. Because at the end of the day, it is a competition. So if you're not doing it, somebody else will. That job's going to take that person.
Right, and that's the piece that a lot of people miss. You know what I mean? And speaking to like all of that experience and like everything that you've gone through, a question that I'm going to ask a lot of like guests on the show is what do you feel your purpose is? Just after speaking about kind of like all of your experiences and like where your career is like now, all the trials and tribulations that you've gone through, what do you feel your purpose is in life?
To give back, and however that looks. I've had an amazing basketball career that's still ongoing. Mm-hmm. I've had a lot of experiences in the professional world that are still going. But just to give back to any up-and-coming athletes, whether it's basketball or other sports, give them insight on what worked for me, what didn't work, what it's going to take, the sacrifices that are going to be made, that need to be made in order to chase the dreams you want to chase. And then even with the kids I teach, instilling in them the work habits. Because the kids I teach, they're all not going to be athletes. Yeah. There's some that are going to chase other dreams. But there's a lot of experience that can be had just by looking at my journey and what can you take from it. Because everyone's perspective is going to be different. Like, a lot of people that made influence in my life were not always basketball players. There are people that work in the professional world as lawyers, as doctors, that you can take from. And skills and habits and kind of mindsets that you need to have. So I think my biggest purpose is just to give back any way that I can. And I think that's why my biggest passion is working with kids, is because I have that opportunity to give back on a daily basis and kind of create an atmosphere where I'm helping them mold into something bigger than themselves. and kind of help them shape for the world they live in, and especially as a male of color, because that's a different ball game for us, because we don't have the luxuries that other people have. We don't get second chances. We'd be lucky to even get a first chance in most opportunities. So anything I can help combat that, especially if a kid of color is coming, like I'm a testament that you can go to a school like KO and thrive, not just be there and survive, but thrive.
Yeah.
So I think that's my biggest thing, and the biggest reason I went back to KO is to show those kids of color, well, it is possible. Like, I know you're gonna look at this like, yo, I can't do this, because that's how I was, but you can, because I'm here to show you that I was able to do it, and I'm going to do everything in my power to help you do it. And I think that's my biggest purpose now.
Yeah, and that's powerful, just realizing the platform that you're displaying, right? And that might not necessarily be like speaking on it all the time. It's just like living your life the way that you see it. And like that in itself is impactful. Like having people just kind of just see it for what it is. You never really realize like how many people that you're influencing.
Yep.
But when you hold yourself to like a certain standard, you know what I'm saying? Like, and just again, like you don't really know who's watching you. Yeah. So like holding yourself to that standard every day, as if like, oh, like I might be, you know, impactful to someone's life that I might not even realize someone's like paying attention to.
Right.
I think is a great way of carrying, you know, your lifestyle or going through your day.
Right.
As if, you know, somebody's watching you that you just may not know. And again, like you might be impacting somebody that might not ever speak to you.
Yep.
And then again, just kind of just speaking to that and just holding yourself to that standard is something that should be done every day. Like it shouldn't be like an inconsistent thing, or like, oh, I'm gonna decide to kind of just hold myself to that standard this day. If you live your life like that every day, if you feel like that's what your purpose is, right, to kind of just create that impact, or to be somebody that is providing that experience, that's an everyday thing.
Right.
Like you don't get to pick and choose that. And I think it's important for people to see that for sure.
I mean, at the end of the day, there's no better thing than impact. Like, I just think, yeah, we want money, we want things to set ourselves up, but just to know you had an impact on someone else's lives, like, it's just nothing powerful than that, because that just means you're doing something right. And it's kind of that reaffirmation of and reassurance that, okay, like I'm doing okay. And you don't get that as much if you don't work with kids, but that's just where it's at its heightened. And the fact that I can be a part of what the future is going to hold in some sense and use all that I have to make the future a better place for hopefully one day my own future kids, then that's more powerful for me, because you just never know that these students could be your future kid's boss. They could be your future kid's teacher. Like, you just don't know. So it's just really just nurturing that youth and creating that impact and ensuring that the future is in a good place.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's great. I appreciate you sharing that with me. I'll let you get back to it. Like I said, I appreciate you joining me and taking time out of your day
This was dope.
to kind of just, you know, have this conversation. You know, I think I learned a lot about you that I might have not known before, which is great. You know, obviously just playing basketball with you and kind of just like experiencing that, I think it's really special, honestly. So,
I mean, I appreciate having this. This was fun. This was really exciting.
Awesome. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah.